This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. With Cybersecurity Awareness Month winding down, LifeLock wants to remind you to update your software. These updates will patch up security issues that identity thieves can exploit to gain access to your personal info. For comprehensive identity theft protection, there's LifeLock. LifeLock alerts you to more uses of your personal info and fixes issues that arise. Protect your identity today with a 30-day free trial at lifelock.com/podcast.
When you go to see a doctor, are you looking for someone who is a medical expert or someone who is an anti-oppression and anti-racism advocate? Hello and welcome to the Full Comment Podcast. My name's Brian Lilly. Today we're going to look at changes that are being proposed to CanMEDS, an offshoot of the Royal College of Physicians and Surgeons. There are calls to change the way that doctors are trained in this country. Quoting from a document that was published last December when I first wrote about this, it says that a new model of CanMEDS would seek to center values such as anti-oppression, anti-racism, and social justice rather than medical expertise, end quote. I don't know about you, but that's very concerning to me. It's also concerning to a number of doctors who are pushing back, including our guest today. Dr. Mark D'Souza is a family physician in Toronto. He also has an affiliation with Queen's University Medical School, where he is an assistant professor, and he joins me now from his practice. Dr. D'Souza, thanks so much.
Good morning, Brian. It's great to be here.
So this woke takeover of medicine, as a recent piece in National Post described it, how did this come about, and is this something that we should be concerned about? Because when I wrote about this last December and quoted from the CanMEDS proposal, the Royal College replied that it was fake news, that it was misinformation out there, that they wanted to replace medical expertise with anti-oppression and anti-racism. And yet, as you just heard, I quoted from them. So you're part of this organization. You're a practicing doctor. What's going on and why are you concerned?
So first, just a brief overview of what the CanMEDS framework is. This is the ideals of what it means to be a Canadian physician. And this has been around since 1996, surviving or changing very slightly over two iterations. And the CanMEDS framework consists of 7 words, such as communicator, leader, medical expert, traditionally most of all, and scholar, and then each of these words is actually followed by 1 to 2 paragraphs of an explanation. So what's happened is, now that they're up for renewal every 10 years, so it was scheduled for 2025, a group of activist doctors who run the academic institutions such as the Royal College, they want to radically transform it into, and they basically said the quiet part out loud, which is they want to, as you quoted, this is quoting directly from them, to decenter medical expertise. And if you read the rest of the supporting documents, it basically insert all the social justice jargon in it. And those 1 to 2 paragraphs that follow each of these 7 ideals, they've all been replaced with the words that you were talking about, including critical race theory, anti-oppression, decolonization, and acknowledging, of course, they have to do this, white supremacy.
What does medicine have to do with any of that? Is medicine now racist? Is medicine now white supremacist? I mean, I've seen academics use this and claim that math is rooted in white supremacy. Utter nonsense and ridiculous, but this has spread everywhere. I mean, how do they arrive at that?
Well, it looks like it's copy pasted over from all the different other woke takeovers of different institutions. So, yeah, I don't think it has any place in medicine, but I think they just have it's the spirit of wokeness, the spirit of ideological capture by the left of different institutions, that just everything is racist, and it displaces the actual medical practice. So yes, one thing specific, they do explicitly say we have to acknowledge that Western medicine is founded on racism. All physicians acknowledge that.
Yeah, how? Like, I wish I could get them to explain how that it's based in racism. Western medicine has drawn from advances from around the world. It's as ridiculous as saying math is centered in Western colonialism and white supremacy. I mean, you look at how math was developed, much like medicine. The Arabic scholars came up with this. Scholars in India came up with inventing the zero. You incorporate that and you build on it. And medicine has done the same thing, claiming that it's centered in Western white supremacy. It is beyond ridiculous. But I worry about what this means for medical training. Is that part of your concern?
Absolutely. It's not just the ideals for medical trainees, because everyone will be indoctrinated in the progressive agenda, but it's also the ideals of what it means to practice medicine in Canada. So we'll have to also bend the knee, so to speak, to this ideology.
Now, do you need to be a member of the Royal College to practice? So, future doctors, as you say, will go through this. You say you'll have to bend the knee. I was talking with one physician who is quite outraged by this. He told me, he said, I'm not involved.
Not the only one. Yeah.
Not involved with the fight, but outraged by this, and said, if they force this, I will just surrender my membership in the Royal College. Do you need to be a member of the Royal College to practice?
I actually think you need to be a member of one of two organizations. So if you were a GP trained like myself, you have to be a member of the College of Family Physicians. If you are a specialist trained, like the doctor you were referring to, you have to be a member of the Royal College. Now, they're all working together on this. It's just the Royal College happens to be the body taking the lead on this.
One of the doctors that is pushing this is a guy named Raghu Venugopal. He's interacted with me frequently on X. He is clearly a social justice warrior. He's been freaking out over Ontario Premier Doug Ford expanding the sale of alcohol, predicting that tens of thousands of people are going to die as a result of this. Yet he absolutely supports safe supply and safe injection sites, which we know the safe supply is leading to increased deaths. And at the same time, just 3 weeks ago, was encourage everyone to mask up in public over COVID. I look at his public pronouncements and I don't see a doctor. I see an activist who happens to be a doctor and is putting his political views ahead of sane, rational discussion. I mean, we can have a discussion about the impact of, expanding alcohol sales and will there be harms and harms versus benefits and all of that. But on every issue, it seems like he just adopts whatever the far left has. He's one of the guys pushing this change.
There's a group of them at the top of the chain. They're all patting themselves on the back and saying that this is the way. Congratulations, and this is the way of the future. And everyone else who doesn't agree. I mean, I've seen some of his posts, and they don't tend to be all that. They're not all that polite, especially to Professor Revers, who wrote that op-ed last week, exposing they're good at debate.
So. How do you fight back? If most, a few doctors that I've spoken to, including yourself, have said that they don't believe that the majority of doctors support this. And yet, clearly, the activists have taken control of the institution. So how do you stop this from happening?
Before I answer that question, I want to share some other news that may make us feel better, but may also make us feel worse. This is actually part of a wider trend in Western medicine of progressive agenda taking over. So the American Medical Association, for example, they also say the same things formally. They want to embed anti-racism, racial equity, social justice into their organizations. And then in Europe, it's the similar thing going on. But how do you fight back? I actually think public awareness, first of all, is public pressure, public awareness is having its effect. The college did email me 2 days ago to give me some updates that A, that they're actually implementing in 2027, and B, that they are going to release some updates on the framework sometime later this month, see what they do and how much they walk back. But the other way to fight this is really, I think we should be pushing for regulatory bodies for legislation against regulatory body overreach. And I know you've done some work on reporting on Jordan Peterson's case, but that's definitely on a lot of our minds. And it's probably the reason why this has gotten to this point without too much of public awareness, because we're just afraid to speak up.
In Jordan Peterson's case, which I was reporting on around the same time as I started reporting on CanMEDS, and well, actually, I guess it was the year previous. Crazy things come up at the end of December in the news cycle, and this is one of them. But when I was first reporting on what was happening to Jordan Peterson, I heard from teachers, lawyers, doctors, engineers, all kinds of people who are required as part of their job to belong to these professional associations. And they said, I'm worried about this too. Now, if this goes forward, I'm in terms of medicine, I'm worried about what it means for the future of teaching. And we have seen several medical schools already implement, fast tracks for certain racialized or minority groups. I hate that term racialized. The term racialized to me actually sounds like it's white supremacist because it makes it sound like being white is the norm and everyone else is racialized, therefore not the norm. I don't use the term. It's the woke left that uses it. And to me, that sounds white supremacist. But anyways, so using their term, there are fast tracks and special admissions formats for racialized groups within medical schools. Now we've got this. But I think that what you have to be worried about next is what's happened to Dr. Peterson, that if you have the wrong thought, you will be punished by your regulatory body.
Absolutely. We need to protect the ability of physicians and every other regulated professional to be able to speak. That's how we defeat this. And I did want to comment as well on the admissions criteria, because I think I see that coming as well. And in fact, they even explicitly call for it in the supporting documents for this CanMEDS 2025 framework of getting social justice, equity, diversity, inclusivity, the new holy trinity into the admissions. If you look at specifically, I'll highlight Dalhousie, but I can see this as part of a wider trend with medical school admissions. Dalhousie does not have a minimum GPA or MCAT requirements for two particular preferred racial groups. I think the medical schools need to be pressed onto how are they going to make sure that this just doesn't end up being racial quotas.
I have been treated by doctors of all backgrounds. My family physician for the longest time when I lived in Hamilton was from India. His son, who, he was an Indian immigrant, his son who was born here, raised here, I believe he's taking over the practice now. My family members still go to that GP. I've had Arabic Muslim doctors, Jewish doctors. I just want a good doctor. This is a bizarre way of handling it. One of the top obstetricians in Ottawa, and I believe that the groups, one of the groups getting favorable access are Black students. This would offend one of the top obstetricians that delivered my kids when I was in Ottawa. Dr. Nimrod would have been furious with this. He was a very accomplished man. You don't get the best doctors through this format.
This movement is also very anti-meritocratic, and they're explicit about it. So no, you don't get the best doctors. And what do Canadians want? The people who are most capable of being the best doctors for them.
So medical schools are going down this route. Dalhousie's gone this route already. I believe University of Alberta, U of T, I'm guessing can't be far behind.
Queen's, my own school, is they were excited to announce a few months ago these exciting changes, and I think they tripped over themselves many times trying to say the word diversity in their announcement as many times as possible. So,
what was your medical school like when you went? It's trying to find a family doctor here in Toronto. You are getting doctors from all over the world. And I probably see fewer white doctors than ever before. Isn't it a huge melting pot or mosaic in medical schools in this country already?
Absolutely. I was a Queen's graduate of 2009 class, School of Medicine, and it was a melting pot of everyone, every ethnicity, about 50-50 men and women. It's about as even as you can get. But we weren't divided like it is now. And all they do is they sow division between people. I actually grew up in Toronto. I'm born and raised here, and race was never really talked about. And now it seems to be the only thing we talk about.
What I remember was, and I've used this example before, I was taught what Martin Luther King professed: judge people by the content of their character, not the color of their skin. And that may have been what I was taught in school in the 80s, but I would say that Malcolm X has won the day and not Martin Luther King. We now judge people based on their race, based on their ethnicity, and the people that say they're anti-racist demand that is how we judge people.
They're masters of language. They've actually been quite successful in changing the definition of racism, and now it's gone the other way.
Within practice, is this talked about, or is it just the small group of activists with your fellow doctors?
I think it is talked about I practice it in the community. So I think within the academic echo chambers, it is talked about. Quietly in the community, my colleagues and I, we do talk about it for sure, but we can't really say it aloud. We can't broadcast, say on X. There's only one political ideology you can broadcast loudly. As you know, it's whatever they're saying. There are no consequences for that. But yeah, it's hard to know exactly how many people would be against their position, but I do have a sense that it is 90+% of physicians. We can't say it.
Have you been called a white supremacist yet for opposing this?
Not yet.
Because people are listening to us and not watching us, I'll just point out that I don't think you're white.
I might be the brown face of white supremacy. It might be a moniker I'll get soon.
Yeah. But I'm amazed they haven't called you that yet. But I'm sure it's coming shortly.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not the only one speaking out. I think I'm the most recent about this, and I don't think I'll be the last one until there's a elimination of politics from medicine.
All right. We need to take a quick break, but when we come back, we'll chat a bit about your book because you do have a new book out, and it is called, let me just scroll back up, Lost and Found: How Meaningless Living is Destroying Us and 3 Keys to Fix It. More in moments. The push to change how we view medicine, how we view reality, quite frankly, isn't just happening in Canada. We've been talking about CanMEDS with Dr. Mark D'Souza, but Dr. D'Souza, this issue is global. You've pointed to UCLA Medical School. Tell me about the segregated classes. I thought we were against segregation in education, but apparently it's back in vogue at UCLA's medical school.
What's old is new again, Brian. And it seems like one of the medical schools affiliated with the University of UCLA, they are trying segregated classes for some sessions. They wrote this up in the New England Journal of Medicine a few years ago, and they seem very proud of it, as if, and so I use this as an example of, people may ask me, why are you worried? It won't go that far in Canada. So I can imagine all these disaster possibilities in Canada, but I can just stick to, for the audience, things that are happening quite close to us. And if we keep going down this route, why wouldn't we end up with segregated classes like UCLA? Because it's all part of the same movement.
The issue of gender, it's not in CanMEDS, but you are seeing it show up elsewhere. And you were telling me that European cardiologists have removed gender from how they treat things. Explain that, because my understanding of the human body is still that men and women are different.
This is the tide that we've been seeing, and many doctors have been very worried about the future of medicine, the actual delivery of medical care, because we could see where this was going. And now finally, you see something very objective change. The European Society of Cardiology just removed women as a risk factor for stroke. So that will have direct implications in how we treat women for strokes. Because of, and they actually say that the inclusion of gender in the criteria will complicate clinical practice.
So why are they removing it?
Because it gets confusing with transgender, non-binary. But in reality, Yeah, being a woman is a risk factor, so they will be undertreated.
But you know, my understanding is that things like strokes and heart attacks, the symptoms and how things can be proactively dealt with or treated, that there are differences between men and women. Or am I incorrect in my thinking?
The whole array of pathology in humans has we're trained in medical school, and we learn throughout that what is the age, what is the patient, what is the sex of the patient, and that really does play into your diagnostic capabilities. This is more likely or that is more likely. We're going to start to miss things as gender gets really confusing and deleted from, and women are erased from the language.
I was, it's amazing that this is happening at the same time as we're getting breakthroughs, because I was reading an article maybe 2-3 months ago about how doctors have determined some new differences in how to spot heart attacks and risk factors for women, because men have been, more men have heart attacks than women. They have been women, and how it shows with women, that's been overlooked and understudied. And so we've got new information about, hey, this is how heart attacks show up in women. This is how to spot the signs. This is how to treat them. And now you've got these activists trying to brush all that aside in the name of their ideology. People, Dr. Venepal thinks that beer in corner stores will kill people. This will kill people.
It's quite a distraction from the changes to medicine when you just do activism. So yeah, this will kill people. Heart attacks specifically in women are harder to pick up. And now it's going to be even harder if you can't say the word woman.
Look, I think most sensible doctors will, but if this is not stopped, this will show up in CanMEDS, and then this is how doctors will be treated. And I was speaking with Dr. Gad Sada a little while ago about how bad ideas that start in the sociology department in universities and get ignored don't stay there. It's not like Vegas. They don't stay there. This will keep spreading. And while you're fighting back against it, maybe the next generation of doctors will say, oh, no, absolutely. We can't determine anything by someone's gender, and we shouldn't consider gender in treating people. Prostate cancer shows up the same in everyone.
Doesn't have to be in CanMEDS to end up in the curriculum.
So you think medical schools will just adopt these things over the coming years?
It's hard to say. I do worry that's the case. Orwell did warn about how language shapes thoughts, and you could see even as this American Medical Association has this document on how to say it's pregnant persons now, or they encourage us to say sex assigned at birth. They're really pushing hard on the language. They all do in the woke mind virus. And yeah, I can't see how that doesn't affect medical training.
Yeah, I remember a little while ago, Marcy Ian, the Liberal MP and cabinet minister who's in charge of women's equity, she is using this non-gendered language. She was talking about women and referring to them as menstruators. And I can't think of a word that women would want to use to describe themselves any less than menstruators. Menstruation is a fact of life, but I've never met a single woman that enjoys it or would want to be identified as, you're no longer a woman, you're a menstruator. It is, I actually find the push on changing gender in the language is aimed more at women than men. And I've described it as an attempt to erase women and femininity from our language. It's not happening to men. And men need to speak up, I think, but women also need to stand up and say, hell no, I am a woman. You will not refer to me as a person who is pregnant, a person who menstruates.
Yeah, so what have we said has come back in vogue? So racism has come back in vogue, sexism against women, segregation. Is this where we're headed?
I think it is, and that does worry me. Let's talk a bit about your book, Lost and Found: How Meaningless Living is Destroying Us, and 3 Keys to Fix It. What do you mean by meaningless living?
Well, I wrote this I really started writing to try to answer the question for myself why we're so divided and increasingly divided. And people seem, despite how materially prosperous our society is, how empty we are on the inside. And then at the deeper question I was asking myself at the time was, why do people take opioids? Because I was practicing in addiction medicine at that time as well. Why do young people with promising futures throw their lives away for opioids? And at the deepest answer I found simplistically is just to say that they really lack meaning and purpose.
So they're looking for something to fill the void.
Man does not live on bread alone.
So, I mean, without giving away everything, you want people to read the book. How do we fix it?
But I think in hindsight, was my stab at a cure for the woke mind virus. And there are three things that I organically discovered. And I think even just one might mend societal rift and bring us back together, and hopefully even give people purpose enough to stop taking opioids. So one is freedom of speech, especially for those who you don't agree with. And you and I covered on this podcast the importance of especially having freedom of speech protected for regulated professionals. But I think if you had freedom of speech, all these arguments for women being removed as a risk factor for stroke, or all the woke arguments disappear. And then you sprinkle in the other two solutions. So traditional values, at least I argue for traditional religion, and then some personal responsibility. None of those things are in the progressive agenda.
The idea that there is higher purpose out there is universal, regardless of your faith or lack of it. Even atheists I know will say that there is a higher purpose or a calling. That's part of what you talk about in the book. You can have your own faith, you can have something else, but you need a purpose. And I think a lot of people have lost that in the way that we've organized society now.
Right, and fall for these, what I call replacement religions, or just any faulty belief system. So the middle part of the book is walking people through the most popular replaced religions or faulty belief systems. I actually have the whole episode that you documented quite well on the math is racist is in there because I thought it was a great example how language is used to distort thought. And I also walked people through the climate alarmism as a replacement religion. I used one of your colleagues, Lori Goldstein's excellent reporting on emissions targets, failed Canadian emissions target, which was really helpful.
Lori has done amazing work on that, and there's no doubt that climate alarmism has become a religion. And it is, you see the people that will glue themselves to a road or an artistic masterpiece. They're so devoted to that. They have replaced any other faith with this new belief system, and it leads to, any belief system can lead to extremism, but there are some extreme, to use Pierre Poilievre's word of late, wackos within that movement.
Yeah. I even have a chapter doing the counter argument to diversity, equity, inclusivity, which is part of this CanMEDS and the woke movement.
That is what it is all about. The book is out just over a couple of weeks now. It is called Lost and Found: How Meaningless Living is Destroying Us and 3 Keys to Fix It by Mark D'Souza. Mark, thanks so much for the time today, and thanks for the book. I have not read it yet, but trust me, I will, and keep us updated on your fight against the insanity within the medical school. I know that you're not alone.
Definitely. Thank you so much for having me, Brian.
Full Comment is a post-media podcast. My name's Brian Lilly, your host. This episode was produced by Andre Prue with theme music by Bryce Hall. Kevin Libin is the executive producer. Remember, you can subscribe to Full Comment on Apple Podcasts, Google, Spotify, Amazon Music, YouTube. Now, leave us a rating, give us a review, and tell your friends about us. Thanks for listening. Until next time, I'm Brian Lilly.